Well. Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave. It is a very bright and sunny Saturday morning over here from Helsinki, Finland. I do want to be wishing you well to start off your nice little, what is it, the 20th day of June in the year 2020. For those of you in the Nordic part of this world, this is midsummer, so I want to wish you a happy midsummer. And if it's just a regular Saturday for you, I want to wish you a happy regular Saturday. And whatever holiday or creed or religion that respects this day in your lands, well, you know what? I'm wishing you a happy day, even if I am ignorant to the fact of whatever that holiday may be. Anyways, more on Bitcoin, as I want to follow up on yesterday's short-term time frame analysis, of which we didn't really see anything happen, to be quite honest. However, that actually has lit up with a little bit of a bias coming into this weekend trading session, which I do believe that the short-term time frames are once again kind of hinting at another, short-term time frame move. So we're talking about maybe 200, 300 bucks from this price point right now, which is looking relatively likely over the weekend time. So I actually do think that it's going to be a little bit of opportunity, perhaps. Anyways, I typically do refrain from trading on the weekends, as I don't necessarily like to get involved during these times. But desperate times call for desperate measures, and perhaps perhaps if the edge is there, perhaps I will take. Anyways, on top of that, what else do I want to say? Let's go look at the Krown trading application, of which we can see that the open interest still at the precipice of that top side of the range at 1,750,000,000, which I still need to see a break of that range. I need to see a constructive break of that range, plus a break of the high term time frame range, which, as we've been saying, is pretty much unchanged for the last, I guess, like 2 months now. Above, I suppose we could use about 9,000 now, and below above about 9,900 and below about 9,000. We'll go kind of document exactly where those areas are, but top side is going to be more or less unchanged. It's going to 9,900 to 10,000 still what I'm looking at, and in the low sides should be rising up a little bit, ever so slightly. So that's essentially what I want to see right there, to kind of denote the next sort of macro change of behavior, or maybe not macro is the right word, because macro does speak to a greater range, basically the 11.5 to 6,900 region. If you've been following up on these videos for the last, Jesus Christ, like, I don't know, 3 months now. But realistically, we could refer to them, I suppose, as high time frames. Anyways, on top of that, Bitcoin dominance actually coming down a little bit from yesterday, coming down from 65% down to 64.79%, which is going to be interesting. I actually do think that because things are going to be relatively quiet today, maybe a good time to go check out some amazing altcoin charts, as they typically are. And fear and greed index still in the fearful zone. So that is, again, another thing kind of in the back of my mind's eye saying, hey, this does still have the markings of climbing the wall of worry. However, at the end of the day, price levels matter and take precedence to at least my own trading behaviors more than anything else. However, that is still on the side of the boo laws, I suppose, as long as Bitcoin does hold this range and that higher low structure that it has thus far, which it's not too far away from destroying. So that's kind of the big focus of what I'll be looking at over this coming week. So let's go into the actual price action charts themselves. Starting off with, Jesus Christ, this is a very low time frame right now, but let's go to a daily and just kind of document these areas once again. Yes, the rising trend line kind of holding in these higher lows as it is now coming in a little bit above 9,000. So both for the short-term and long-term region to the downside, I do kind of look at them as almost one and the same. Now, any sort of a 12-hour or daily total closure below 9,000, and yes, I do think that we will initiate that major move to the downside. Very, 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 very likely overall targeting 7,500 with bounces along the way at likely 8,500 and then 8150 region right here. Also could just use the last wick low that Bitcoin spiked down to on the 14th of June at 8895.01. So both those areas are kind of one and the same. I think that both of them pretty much get it, but realistically what we're looking for is a change of behavior here. And if that does happen, that will confirm this as a downtrend, as we will have a series of lower highs, 1, 2, 3, or I guess that's high, that's your lower high, that's your next lower high, and then we have low and then lower low below this spike low right here on either a closing or a wick basis. So that's where I'm getting both those numbers from. Again, a little bit above 9,000 and then as much as on a wick basis, depending upon your exchange, somewhere around 8,900 essentially. I think most exchanges are like a few bucks below 8,900. So if either one of those things do happen, I would be looking for an overall meltdown of price action. Like I said, at the very least to the 0.5 fib down here at about 7,500-ish region. Um, and uh, and while I do think that area could actually reverse it, personally speaking, I actually do think that things would come down in 6,900 region right here. Also the 618. Both these areas are historically very much relevant, as we do see big bad accumulation zones within this region right here, and also big bad breakouts and breakdowns pivoted around that 7,500-ish number, and also the 6,900 region as well, with 8,150 being an area of interest. However, I don't think that would be or have enough juice to actually reverse this fully, although I do think that it would produce quite a nice bounce, especially seeing that the 200 simple is right around that structure as well. But keep in mind that the measured move from the breakdown of this, if this does confirm a breakdown, yes, would be pointed towards the 0.5 as well. So good confluence there. I'm sure if we throw in the volume profile, it also suggests a few things, within that region as well, which, well, why not? We can do that right now. And what do you know? Yes, we do see some high value nodes coming in right around there, right around the 618, right around the 382. So all these areas have good confluence with each other, and that's essentially what I'm looking at right now. Anyways, with the way that Bitcoin closed yesterday to close out the weekly, I would say that this is a very anemic close, and now we both have a bearish cross on the daily, and I believe, is it the 2 day as well? No, sorry, the 2 days way far away. I apologize, that was uncalled for. But we do have the 10 symbol cross and downside of the 21. I used to have a video publicly available on YouTube. I don't know if it's still publicly available on YouTube, but for the people in the program, it's definitely available there about this cross. But realistically, what we're looking at right here is that if this does get confirmed as a local high, which it is confirmed as a stop reverse point right here, but we don't necessarily have continuation on a new trend just yet until we actually do get those next closures lower. But as it would look like, to kind of follow from the people in the program, this is essentially what you're looking for on a good read on this one, as you're getting the cross with a lower period below a higher period, as price action essentially gets rejected in the formation of putting in a lower high, or what would be a lower high if this does get another close lower. So again, putting all the puzzle pieces together, I do think that coming back down below this level is not indicative of strength. However, while I do think that Bitcoin is kind of setting up for a test down to this region, somewhere around maybe 9,000 or 9,100-ish, which is about a $200 to $300 move from this price point, which is certainly tradable. And of course, it's not financial advice, so I'm not a financial advisor. I do believe that if that happens today, Saturday, or even Sunday, very likely it's not going to actually break. It's probably going to bounce once again in this region right here, anywhere between 9,000 and 9,100-ish region, of which that's where I look for the next sort of keys with price action. As long as Bitcoin is below this last prior high right here, that is looking a lot more like the construction of a downtrend, and that is 9,500, or actually a few ticks above it at 9,520-ish region, depending upon your exchange once again. So as long as we're below that area, or below the wick high of this spike up as well at 95.92.04, I would say that it's still pressure down as far as the short and medium term timeframes go right here. And as far as the high term timeframes go, well, the range is more or less something like this, between the blue box at 9,900 to the upside, and in the same area that we spoke about to the downside at about 8,900 on a wick, or a 12-hour or daily closing below about 9,000, technically a little bit above 9,000 to be fair. But as it stands right now, daily is going to start to turn down, I believe, or sorry, no, it's not going to turn down. But let's focus on this for a second here. We do see that historical volatility percentile is, as we've been saying for the last week, we are at an outlier of this right now, which suggests that a big bad move can come at any moment in time. Now, I don't think that this happens over the weekend. I can obviously be wrong about that, but what we have not seen in Bitcoin history is actually a reversal from the macro trend that happens over a weekend that gets sustained during the week. We've actually never seen that, and every time I fucking say that, there's always some very interesting people in the comment section who are very quick to judge that. And then what happens during the week? Well, the trend that we've been seeing ever since CMEs came about in late 2017 essentially holds. So that's what I mean by that. It's not to say that it's never going to reverse, in that sense. I'm sure that at some point in time there's going to be some weird price action and shit, but the trend that we have for the last 3 years, ever since CMEs debuted, well, that has been it. So I would be more than willing to kind of keep on that. Keep in mind, though, that would speak towards a break of the greater range here, whether it be below 8,900 or above 9,900. So, moving back down to the low side of this range would not violate that. And it would only violate it if we actually broke below that current low right here. and then absolutely just shattered down to like the low 8,000s. That's kind of what I'd be saying, or sorry, that's kind of the signature that I'd be looking at for there. Anyway, Jesus Christ, man, I'm getting way off track here. So when looking at the daily and realistically the 2-day historical volatility percentile as well, we are at an outlier of a read here. I mean, we've never really seen even this prolonged of low volatility. And put this in perspective, we had 1, 2, 3 days of a 1 read on historical volatility percentile. That means that if we looked back at the last 100 days, 99 times out of that, it's going to have higher volatility. And then for the last 1, 2, 3, 4 days, it's literally been at a 0 read. I didn't even know it could actually go that low, because, well, I guess that actually does make sense because it's a percentile. And then a couple of days we actually had a 2 read, so that was pretty damn interesting. Anyways, we've actually, I don't believe to my knowledge, been this low before. If you could stop slamming the fucking cupboards, that'd be great. Jesus Christ. Anyways, maybe right on over here in October 2018, 1, 2, 3, 4 days of 0. Interesting. And then about a month before that, kind of the same sort of read here. And that was actually setting up for the big bad drop from 6,000 down to 3,000, a 50% move right there. Time before that we were somewhat comparable to what we're doing right now. Again, another 4 days of about a 0 read was on this rejection at 10,000 in May 2018 before going from 10,000 to 6,000 as well. Time before that was actually, is this an example right here? No, not necessarily. Yeah, I mean, you really have to go back pretty damn far to find another example of this. I'm sure that there are some that actually do result in upside continuation. Maybe this one right here, although it's not necessarily as low as what we're dealing with right now, or sustained as low for as long. Hey, stop that. But this one technically does come to the upside, to be fair. So, volatility does not necessarily imply direction. That's what we use our momentum oscillators for, and just trend analysis in general. But as it stands right now, things are looking, things are looking like the signature that we typically see before a multi-$1,000 move. In the case of a downside move, typically between 40 and 50% if we were to kind of measure out those last few ones, which we can do really quickly right here. This last one right here coming at, the 6,000 to 3,000 meltdown, that was 51% down. The time before that was this guy right here, I believe, that we put on the map, which was about 42%. And if we were to go back, and again, I'm picking very specific examples here. I mean, there's obviously examples like this, which are very low as well, but not necessarily as aggressive as what we're doing right now. And this one, of course, another, I don't know, actually only 17.5% down on that one, so not as impressive there. And then more recently, this 10,000 to, I mean, realistically, do you want to call it all the way down here? Yeah, about 38.5 to 40%. So to put that in perspective, shaving that off of our current high, which a little bit above 10,000, on a 40% retracing, that actually put us back down around the 6,900-ish region. On a 50% retracing, that actually put us back down around our closing lows, funnily enough, that we saw in early March in the mid to upper 4,000. So that actually would be interesting from a market, from a market symmetry perspective, if we were to take that route on this. And again, keep in mind that while I'm saying all of this, technically speaking, as a trader, I should not be bearish, or I'm speaking personally here. You are free to do whatever you want. You are your own person. But technically speaking, in the way that I've been trained as a trader, I'm technically not supposed to be bearish on this area right here. The reason why is because trend is up on just about all time frames up to a weekly, but not including a weekly. And momentum oscillators are also up as well, and we are printing a bullish reaccumulation formation in the form of an ascending triangle, and we are seeing all major moving averages on a daily, 2-day, 3-day, and even weekly, presenting a more bullish case here. But the problem with this is that we're not really seeing follow through from it. So that's why I'm very skeptical about this right now. And as we've been saying for the past couple of weeks, hesitation within this region is not going to be interpreted as strength for the BULAs. Really wanted to see things break to the upside somewhere right around here, early June. Now we're kind of getting to the late part of June. And while I do think that we probably have another swipe to the downside at 9,000 and probably bounce up, again, as long as that bounces below this prior high right here at about 9,500, it's just another lower high. That's all it is. And that would be really looking like it's getting ready to change around the trends. And the trends from like the daily 2-day and above. So if you are looking for that initial signal to kind of change around the overall behavior, I do believe that it is being printed in there, but it isn't necessarily confirmed just yet. That still is to be met by the conditions that we outlaid at the beginning of this video. However, right now, looking at momentum oscillators, we are seeing something interesting. We are seeing daily Stokes actually pointed up, which this is on a Saturday, which is typically a day of bullshit. But looking at a 12-hour, also very interesting right here as well. We do see it pointed north as well, but here's the thing. This has been pointed north ever since 15th right here, which Bitcoin price action has been coming down all the way, pretty much giving up most of this anemic rally, which is setting in, or sorry, would be described as that lower high if Bitcoin does get that drive lower that we just spoke about. On a 12-hour closing basis, we will have a lower lows, technically speaking, on any sort of a closure below about 9,100. This spike right here, which that would look like a downtrend on a 12-hour. In fact, we already kind of have it in there. That's your high, that's your lower high, that's your low, that's your lower low, that's your lower high right there. Continuation below this point right here would really confirm, a change and reversal in trend. Keep in mind that would likely put the 12-hour Stokes in, as a rejection of the bullish control zone. And if we do close below on this next 12-hour dildo, below 9250-ish region, that will actually force some momentum back to the downside. So not only would it be a rejection of the bullish control zone, we would also be opening back up down again after what is essentially a bearish reset. So that's kind of the way that I see the dominoes falling right now. If Bitcoin can especially break below even the 89 exponential moving average right here. So not only would it be kind of breaking below this set of spike, of all these spikes that it's trying to accumulate on, or at least that's what the Bulas would be kind of trying to paint the picture of right here. But that would also be of course, switching around the momentum from a moving average perspective on, on our lower period moving averages, to be fair, on the daily as well. So all these things would be coming in at around the same area. And guess what? The daily also switches momentum to the downside, which would be considered a rejection of getting out of the bearish control zone right here, or the top side of it, if Bitcoin does close below the same level on the 12-hour that we just spoke about at 9250. Anywhere below there, and there is problems, from not just a structure standpoint, but also momentum standpoint, and then moving averages are going to start to look like they will take over after that on the daily right here, and that's when this becomes, in my opinion, probably actionable. Keeping in mind that historical volatility percentile, realistically being this low suggests that the move can happen at any given moment in time. I'd really expect to see a big spike up into this region right here, following this long-term trend line somewhere around, I believe it'd be coming in around a 58. So that probably does get the bottom or top of the next move before the next sort of contraction phase, of which I think that we're playing at a greater contraction phase here that correlates with the macro structure. So keep in mind, if Bitcoin does break to the downside here, again below about 9,000 on a 12-hour daily total closure, that does not speak to the macro. Actually, the macro speaks below. Some people would argue that the 0.5 here at 7,500. I don't think I'd agree with that. I would agree with 6,900 right here. That's where the macro really starts to take a turn once again. And not only does this get confirmed as, as a lower high in a series of lower high, but it's now a macro lower high before getting ready for a retest of the prior lows right here. And then this just looks like a fucking massive descending triangle over a long period of time. It doesn't get any better than that, it's more bullish than going up, going down, according to the Bulas. And believe me, I do want to be bullish on Bitcoin. Just life is easier as a trader / investor when things just mindlessly go up. There's a great saying: don't confuse brains with the bull market. And I think that that's fucking genius, because it's very true. And I am not too. I'm honest enough to admit that if the game can be easier, I'm more than happy for that, because it's already hard enough. And looking at Bitcoin right here, while it does look like everything's kind of setting up, it's still going to take a little bit of patience for this. So just because the historic volatility percentile is this low, do I think that the move is going to happen over a weekend? I don't think that we get more than like a $200 or $300 move here over the weekend, whether it be back up to 9,500 and test that resistance, or back or to the $9,000 area, maybe 8,900 if things really get crazy, and then set up probably for a resolution this coming week. That's very likely what I'm thinking. Keep in mind though, the weekly is also problematic as we do go to the weekly right here, which on CMEs is already closed at 93.15. And guess what happens on the weekly if we do close here? Well, momentum oscillators or weekly Stokes will naturally turn down. Is that a death sentence in and of itself? No, fuck no, not at all, actually. In fact, this is actually a very good read when you're up in this region for a long period of time. But we're going to get our first real test here on this run, which is likely going to be indicative of that nice pullback. Typically does get things relatively well. We can go kind of back test this even in a bull market, which I need to put log scale on for this one. When we're looking at weekly Stokes, let's see what it's kind of produced in the past. Produce this pullback right here. Or let's actually go from last major high to next major low. And this is, again, in the context of a bull market. So we're specifically picking out a situation here that would be more lenient towards the boo laws, and this produced a 40% meltdown from that signal given. We can look at this one right in over here. This one producing a 34% meltdown right after the fact. This one right here, not even as aggressive, but still producing a 36.25% breakdown right there. This one also producing a 41% breakdown, and these don't look all that crazy right here. These obviously don't look crazy on a log scale. On linear scale they will, but that's the beauty of it. We can just pretend that it didn't really happen. Then we have kind of a lot of snake around here basically at the end of this parabolic run in November to December of 2017, and then it did get the ultimate high on Bitcoin, and then we never really got back into this region until more recently in 2019 on that run to 14,000 right here, which it did actually once again call the top very, very well. Then again, I think, earlier this year in February, calling this high right here. Didn't even get into the same critical zone that we're looking at right now. And once again, kind of hinting at a lost momentum there. So if we kind of put the puzzle piece together and look at historic volatility percentile, plus looking at, we could actually go look at those daily crosses as well, plus looking at momentum oscillators on on the macro trend here for the weekly, it would appear that it would appear that if Bitcoin does break to the downside, looking for a 30 to 50% retracement is very much within the cards. 50% retracement puts us back down in this region right here. 40 puts us back into like the mid to upper 6,000s. 30 probably puts us in like the mid 7s, all of which I do think are reasonable areas. 30% would put us back around 75 to 7,300-ish region. So very interesting there nonetheless. Anyways, let's go back on over here. I do want to take a quick look at this just because it is a Saturday and there's not really too many other things to be speaking about right now, but I'm just actually curious for my own knowledge, looking at this cross and the efficacy of it over time for Bitcoin on the daily specifically. So we can see some fake outs here and there. Nothing's going to be perfect, but when we start to get divergence between these two moving averages, trend does like to play along. It's going to be it's going to be a lot more of a floaty one just because they are lower periods. However, it does actually have a pretty damn good history. When it does switch up from a bull to bear cross, typically indicative that run is nearing its end or it is over. As you can see right here, fake out right there, then big signal right here for a move from 73 to 10,000. Then to the downside right here, it actually gets it all the way from 95 to 44. Not always going to be that good. Then to the upside right here, does not fake out right here. Just comes down ever so briefly and then boom, all the way up from 7,000, essentially a little bit below 7,000 to where we are right now at 10,000. Going all the way back to 2019, all the way back, right? This one to the downside gets it very, very well again. A lot of snakes in this example right here, both to the upside and the downside, of which these first few ones actually do get quite a bit. But this was a major consolidation on the higher term timeframes, nonetheless. And it's not until over here we actually got the big bad signal. But again, we're looking at a 40% retracement right there. And going back into this last major consolidation right here, a lot of false signals, a lot of false positives as well. But again, the key with this one is that when it starts to snake around and give a lot of these less diverging signals here, if you were to think of the distance between the 10 simple and the 21 as like a histogram on a MACD, you would notice that obviously the trend is losing steam as these guys naturally get closer and closer to each other, now actually fully and formally getting across the downside. So to me, that is suggesting that this trend is very much weakening. We're going to see momentum oscillators likely turn down on the weekly at the same time. If that comes alongside of a break of this higher low structure right here, then I don't really see that the BULAs have much going for them for, for the medium and higher term timeframes after that. I mean, even after that, it is a precarious situation, because if Bitcoin does put in another macro lower high here, which is not in the discussion just yet. I mean, that's nowhere near until Bitcoin really goes back down below 6,900. But if that were to happen, I mean, at what point do you just kind of let go of this asset? Well, Beanie Babies will never die. So I'm gonna go down with the ship, baby. Anyways, to the upside, all the things that we spoke about over the last month and a half, 2 months are still very much relevant to the upside. It's just we're closer to the downside right now, so it's more fun to talk about. But that doesn't mean that it can't happen. I want to be very deliberately clear with this. Until Bitcoin actually breaks this area right here, as a trader, I'm not actually bearish. It's just things are shaping up to be that way quite a bit here. Any sort of a move back above this last spike high at 95.92.04, or a 4-hour closure above, what was it, 90, just 9,500, same shit. And yes, I'd look for another test back up to the blue box territory over here between 9,900 and 10,000. That would make this look very good at that point. For the long term, as far as the structure goes, it would still look like we're kind of in that higher low structure, and I'd still be gearing my my overall long-term vision towards a more bullish resolution of this. But it's the same thing as to the downside. Until we actually have resolution above this territory right here, I'm not targeting the measured move of 11,100, just about 11,000 on top of that. I need to see that first, and that would obviously also encompass a higher high above this 10.5 strike right here, which we saw in middle of 2019, or sorry, no, that was actually early February of this year. But if that were to happen, then yes, from a macro structure, I would realistically be targeting 11,500 on a more long-term play for something like that. But for right now, we are at historically low volatility, and things are, historically looking like we typically do get a reversal in this region. So I actually am long volatility right now, or long Vega, more accurately said, also long deltas, and very rarely do I do this, but I am short theta, which I really don't like. But I don't see the allure of selling premium on anything right now. It's just not going to be a good do, historically speaking. This is one of the few times where I'm actually interested in buying straddles and strangles, and maybe. Well, I'll talk about that maybe a little bit later. Anyways, let's go check out CMEs, because they are closed for the weekly, of course, and CMEs closed. I mean, if you're bullish, you look at this as, okay, we close as a doji dollar. That's also a higher low. If we just get continuation above last week's high at 96.30, this looks good for another test back up to 10,000. And I would agree with that. I would agree strongly with that. But let's see what this close is going to look like on our oscillators coming into next week. So we are going to see weekly Stokes cross to the downside once they open up on Sunday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, I believe it is. And it's already printed across down right here. And obviously we did close below 96.74 spot 4. That's already been set in stone there. So what we can do now from CME's perspective is this further verifies what we were looking at on spot price action. Basically, a move above or below this doji dollar right here likely gets the next big move. If it's to the upside, I'm looking for a test of 10,000. That makes this really look overall constructive, and would really air the probabilities in the, or keep the probabilities on the side of the BULAs. If we move to the downside and take out the low side of this 89.30 spike low, then I'd be looking for that downside resolution. Realistically, I'm looking for 7,500 to get tapped into overall over time, maybe not on the same move, and then we'll come back and see if that maybe has some indicativeness of long-term bottoming behavior. So for right now, can't really call something like that, like maybe months out in advance. I don't think that that's also appropriate either. It's not something that I do as a trader. So it's just more so bullshit that essentially analysts talk about, right? Which I really want to kind of separate myself from, because I'm a trader first and foremost. I don't really consider myself an analyst except for like YouTube, but that's not analysis. You don't get paid for it, or at least I don't get paid for analysis. So it's like, if you know how to trade, then you got to speak from that perspective. Let's go over to traditional markets. So traditional markets were also one of the things that were kind of making me more bullish on Bitcoin. The weekly close was good on NASDAQ. I do think that it's going to give another try to the upside coming into next week. But looking at the daily, this is a clear rejection from the last kind of prior high that we put in, of which we did say that move was going to very likely get tested at a little bit above 10,000. So we got that, but the rejection coming in at the end of the week is usually not going to be a good thing. Usually this will lead into continuation coming into Monday, which I would be looking for continuation, perhaps back down around 9,750 to 9,800ish region, and then a bounce there. Then the key critical component comes into view. While I do think that we would bounce there, if the bounce fails and we come anywhere below 9,500 for more aggressive traders, and especially 9,350 for conservative traders, I'd be looking for this one to play out a nice big pullback similar to Bitcoin, back down to like 8,600, maybe even all the way down to probably 8,600, and then we'll come back. And same sort of reads here. The momentum oscillators basically look like they're like, I fucking hate this word, but fractal relationships of each other across multiple different assets. Funny thing about that, where's my goddamn hedge, motherfucker? Interesting stuff, isn't it? Anyways, and you could also use the daily 21 for this as well, as kind of like a more what's called forthright signal, which is going to be crawling its way up to like a little bit above 9,700, I'd imagine by now. But this is also looking, the daily Stokes actually still look fine here. So I wouldn't switch around my overall thoughts on this just yet. I do think that it opens up, a little bit down to start the week at 9,750, 9,800 region. I would be looking for a bounce there, and then it's game on. If this does come back down below 9,500 though, big bad red flag, if you want to call it that, below 9,350, massive red. They're fucking throwing red flags everywhere, man. And this will be a massive fake out, and we will come down very, very hard, very, 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 very likely, kind of similar to Bitcoin, and those things would line up with each other rather well. Gold looking very good, just like we said. I hate that I use that terminology there because it sounds very arrogant. But no, what I want to say is that to follow up on our analysis from gold this last week, just been generally bullish on it. Was looking for a pullback back down to 1,700. We got that, and now closing the week on the highs. Essentially, this is looking good for another drive of continuation, probably up to 1,800 plus. I do think that the monthly looks very, very good here for continuation. And again, I don't own any gold. I don't care about gold. I think it's kind of silly, but as far as charts go, very good chart. And I do think that it's getting ready for 1,800 plus, personal opinion. E-mini futures for SPY also kind of this is the monthly. Let's not look at the monthly. Let's look at the weekly. Weekly still looks good as well, similar to NASDAQ. The weekly looks good. The daily is what concerns me a little bit. When you have a close like this on Friday, it's that can be a fake out. That can be a legitimate reversal. I would say, similar to NASDAQ needing to break those relevant levels that we spoke about, I'd be looking at this level right here, right around 2980-ish region, basically your last little low right here, which is protecting that golden cross, so to speak, for right now. As long as we're above that, I do still lean to the upside on this. I have to, just as as per my rules go. It doesn't mean that you have to. This is, again, not financial advice, and I'm also not perfect. So as long as that happens, I do remain still looking for overall upside. However, second that we break back down below there, I'd be looking for a retracement, low 280s, probably mid 270s is where I'd be looking towards. Anywhere between 275 and 280-ish region. So that'd be a nice big pullback there as well. Let's also check out some of the shitcoins here too. Give them their due diligence, because we are seeing what I would not expect to see. Because when Bitcoin was basically just not doing shit yesterday, altcoins actually did benefit from that, it looks like. So let's go look at Cardano, and what do we see on Cardano? Whoa, we see massive wicks everywhere. Wow, don't you just love trading a piece of absolutely amazing technology like this? Well, it is an uptrend for now. I guess I'd be bullish on this as long as it's above 800 Satoshis. Breaks below 800 Satoshis, then we got some problems. But for right now, path of least resistance is actually higher, above 1,000 Satoshis. What about Link? Haven't followed up on this one for a while. Link still following the uptrend. Oh, you are beautiful, Link. Wow, Jesus Christ, man. Still one of the best charts, and on the daily looking very constructive here as well. I'd actually be looking for a move short to medium term back up to 46,500, and this is an uptrend. It's an uptrend, and the trend is your friend until the end of the trend. And this one has been a 3-year long trend now. Yeah, 3-year long trend. So when Bitcoin was doing 2018, this is what Link was doing versus Bitcoin. To be fair, let's actually look at it versus the dollar. Curious what this would look like. I guess Binance is the one to go to. Doesn't look as strong here, but still likely postulating for a move back up to $4.50. I think that this overall looks good. Below 390, I'd flip my short-term, medium-term targets back down to like low 310 region, and probably a nice bounce there. But for right now, still looking constructive, still looking fine. We didn't even look at low-term time frame oscillators for Bitcoin. Let's go look at Mr. Buterin versus Bitcoin as well. Interesting. Interesting. You can see, you don't need technical analysis to tell you that there's a fucking consolidation going on right here. Looks like one massive triangular formation. Is it a symmetrical triangle, or is it, or what kind of triangle is it? Well, you can see that the down sloping trend line is obviously a lot more aggressive. So technically, selling pressure is a little bit higher here, but it is, But at the end of the day, what do I want to see here? I want to see either a break of this region right here to constitute a change of behavior to the upside from the daily's perspective at 0.026 region. And then I'd look for a retest of this high and probably beyond. That would look pretty damn good. However, the trend here has been to come back down, probably somewhere around the 200 simple or exponential. Let's look at it on a weekly as well. Weekly looks okay. Weekly actually looks okay for reversal here overall. Momentum oscillators are pointed painfully erect to the north side, and weekly Jewel actually giving you a haughtier long signal there as well. And let's see how the past ones did. We had a good one right here as far as price action. What did that look like? That was right here actually on not the actual low, but close enough to it to where I'd be happy with that. Not 0.18, so I do like that. Other than that, I wouldn't consider this signal right here. Yeah, so actually acting as intended. Pretty damn good, actually, pretty damn good. So you know what? I would err on this side of the upside here. Buterin versus Bitcoin. So are shitcoins going to rally? Probably, yeah. Let's look at Litecoin versus Bitcoin. Okay, that looks like absolute dog shit. All right, so we're just going to pretend that didn't happen. And let's go back to Bitcoin and look at the lower term timeframes, and then we'll start to wrap this bitch up because it's already 36 minutes too long. Anyways, looking at the 4 hour right here, 4 hour RSI is bearish. 4 hour Stokes are pointed north right now. However, if we do close this next 4 hour dildo below 93.20, which we close in the next 36 minutes, so by the time that I post this, you will already know the answer to this. Momentum will once again cross to the downside here, and I think that would very likely set it up for a test of the 377. And where is that? Down around 9,000 actually. Looking at the 3 hour, same sort of thing actually, except that the 3 hour Stokes still already pointed to the downside and will remain to the downside as long as we're closing these next 3 hour dildos below 9,300ish region right here. 2 hour showing about the same thing, 93.20, and already angled to the downside, coming from the same area, which I do think is very important to note. Also pressure down from 2 hour Jewel as well. Not that I really care that much about it on that time frame, or on that read particularly as well. I would not take that myself. I only really wait for the perfect signals on the Jewel, or like the very good signals on the Jewel. That I would not consider one. Looking at the hourly right here, 92.89 continues the momentum to the downside. And by the way, we are seeing the hourly Stokes pop up here, following this trend line, right? But this is all being born off of basically a continuation of a downtrend. So I don't like that as well. And look at hourly historic volatility percentile, very low here as well. And this one very, 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 very accurately times moves actually. The hourly and the 30-minute with my settings seem to do pretty damn good. Now I do understand that actually Bali himself uses different settings, and a lot of people will try different settings and and make use of it. Fair enough. That's completely valid, completely fine. I'm just sharing the way that I've learned to use this one and been having good documented behavior with it. I'll put it that way. So yeah, overall, it's basically telling you that as long as this trend fucking continues, the momentum will remain to the downside. I mean, that's basically what it's telling you. Anyways, let's go check out the probability panel over here, and let me make sure that we're on current. Okay, so here's what I'll do for this one. A little bit of a diabolical signal here as well. Difficult, right? Because the short term, yes, we could use 9,200 like we did yesterday, but it doesn't really do too much for me. If we do go back down below yesterday's wick, I do think that we will test down to like 91 or 9,000, something like that. Not that much edge on a trade. I'd realistically be interested in like the 8,900 tick right here, which I don't think that we're going to take out today. But just for, the purposes of interest, I'll use 8,900 to the downside. That would constitute an actual wick lower, and that would really construct this as a downtrend emerging, or actually confirmed at that point. To the upside, I chose 9,600 because that's your last spike high right here. So if Bitcoin could move back above that region, 9,600 again, then yes, I would look for extension to 9,900, 10,000-ish region. So that's a $300, $400 trade. And that would really make this look like an overall bullish signature. And I would very likely be looking for that to break to the upside overall. So we're kind of in like the, dog days right now, as there's not really, it's like the ranges are so fucking small that there's not too much to even be looked at from them. So I'm just going to be picking the greater ranges that are. But keep in mind, the downside of this one the downside range that I'm choosing for this one correlates with high term timeframes. The upside only correlates with the short and medium term. So though that's going to be a massive difference in interpretation as far as the resolution. But keep this in mind that the upside resolution would be 16.85% versus 8.5% to the downside. So obviously the upside is much more favored here. That would make sense too, because, well, it does correlate with a less of an interesting move overall. To the upside on a daily closure, now we're talking about 24.25% essentially percent. The downside is actually diabolically high as well, just below 18%, which anything above 16% is likely, at least in my experience. It's saying that you should prepare for a move like this, because it is reasonably possible that it can happen on this next closure. Specifically, looking at a momentum from this area as well, we're actually seeing daily momentum turn up right now, while price action's just been sliding down. I really don't like that. I really fucking don't like that. That's usually going to be a bearish reset, or interpreted as a bearish reset. Same thing with the 12-hour, except the 12-hour is actually coming down at the same time. So maybe that's actually the better one. But realistically, I'm not too well versed and trained in looking at this indicator itself. Probably need to talk with Boy a little bit more about it specifically to understand exactly where it's coming from, so that I can get more acquainted with it. I mean, realistically, the tools that I show here I've been using for Jesus Christ, maybe like 10 years now, or maybe even longer than that. Moving averages especially, but that one, maybe like a month or two. So not, certainly not as much history for myself. So I don't feel as confident talking about it. And I think that that's important to document. Anyways, let's wrap this bitch up, because, well, at the end of the day, ranges are the fucking same, man. Bitcoin is looking like it's getting ready to test the low side again once again to me, whether it be between like 9,000 and 9,100. Do you think that we probably test down around there? I don't think that it's going to break this weekend. I do think that if we test back down around there, it would imply that we probably do break to the downside overall coming into this next week's of price action. But I'd want to see the reaction after hitting this area right here. If the bounce gets back above 9,500, or 9,500, or especially 9,600, then that would look pretty damn good for a reversal. Correlated with the higher term timeframes, it look very good there. However, if it fails to get above, especially 9,250 and even more so 9,600, pressure is still onto the downside, and it's really posturing for a big break to the downside. If that were to happen, which, just time will tell here. And realistically, at the end of the day, still the price levels are the same. 9,000 to the downside on a 12-hour or daily total closure. Big bad problems. Looking at, likely a move all the way down here. Bounces along the way. Again, 8,500 of interest, 8,150 of interest, 7,500 maybe reversal, 6,900 maybe reversal as well if that prior one fails. And then again, we'll want to see that one in real time. To the upside, can't really look for big bad breakouts to the upside as long as we're below 9,900 to 10,000. If that condition does get met, then yes, I am very bullish for a move up to 11,000, probably 11,500 overall. And this starts to look like an actual emerging macro reversal to the upside if that were to happen. But for right now, we are in the dark ages for Bitcoin. It's basically going to decide, do we want to play a 30 to 50% retracement to the downside here, or do we actually just want to green dildo this baby to the fucking heavens and you get rich by doing nothing? Well, maybe. Who knows? Anyways, I think that's a good place for me to leave this one off. I'd like to wish you well once again. I do want to apologize for the lack of change and real dynamics here. But I do think, I actually do think that we are kind of getting ready for a short-term move. So fair enough. I suppose like the shortest term way of kind of documenting potentially a change of behavior would be a 4-hour closure above the 200 simple, of which we've been getting rejected from there after this last fake out above on the 15th, 16th earlier this week. So it would be a short-term change of behavior, but again, the levels here are just so nice and orderly. I don't really see any real reason to make that more difficult than it needs to be. With that said, I'd like to wish you all once again, take care, and until next time.